Back now on Newsmax Prime, we heard Governor Mike Huckabee earlier in this program making a very strong statement describing the Obama administration's pending nuclear deal with Iran. Although the statement about leading the Israelis to the door of the oven was shocking, Governor Huckabee has long been commended for his ability to deliver a message with a skill he mastered during his time as both a broadcaster and a pastor. 10 days ago, I was in Ames, Iowa, caught up with Governor Huckabee for a one-on-one interview before he took the stage at the Family Leadership Summit. We talked about a variety of topics, and tonight we focus on that Iranian deal, the Senate's role in approving that agreement, and Governor Huckabee's take on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP. You mentioned earlier, I'll paraphrase, an indulgence and empathy or a failure to recognize the threat of Islamic extremism. It appears the current president likewise has an indulgent attitude toward Iran, so much so that they're moving forward with this agreement, an agreement Franklin Graham has said is essentially a death sentence for Israel. Do you agree with what Franklin Graham has said?
Well, I'd take it one step further. It's not just a death sentence for Israel. Let's remember that they were chanting in the streets and in the parliament, even as they were negotiating this deal. They were chanting death to America. This is not just about Israel. This is about us. Israel is only the warm-up act. It's the opening act, but the headliner is America. Iran has never, ever hidden that their ultimate agenda is death to America. Why we sat down at the table with these guys, why we ever negotiated with terrorists makes no sense to me. Let's go further. We got nothing out of this. I read all 159 pages of the document. We didn't even get 4 hostages released. John Kerry admitted that they talked about it. He said they did anyway. Every time they met, and they never got any of that. That should have been a precondition before they ever sat down at the table and said, look, as an act of good faith on your part, you let those 4 Americans out of prison right now. Let us fly them home. And then we'll talk about talking. Till that happens, there is no discussion. In fact, here's what we're going to do. We're going to increase the sanctions. We're going to make it much tougher for you. We're going to bust and bankrupt you unless you start behaving like a member of the world community. They didn't do that. They gave up nothing. They won. We acted like people driving in a brand new Lexus to the car lot and trading it in even for a 15-year-old Yugo. No wonder the Iranians are dancing in the streets. And we're over here scratching our heads saying, what did we just do?
It doesn't appear that the responsibility is solely with the president. The United States Senate, under the legislative initiative of Bob Corker of Tennessee, essentially has formulated a situation where a minority of senators can keep this intact. Has the Senate, has Congress behaved responsibly in terms of dealing with this?
Absolutely not. And not only on this deal, but look at the trade deal. Good heavens. Why did Republicans push to give Obama more power at a time when they should have been pulling back on his executive overreach? We didn't send Republicans to the Senate majority so they would help Obama have more power. We sent them there to check him on issues like the overreach on illegal immigration and the overreach on Obamacare. Instead, they went up there and they were the ones who led the fight to give him more power. And in this deal, both the Iranian deal and the TPP, it's exactly what has happened. And that's why there are so many people out in the heartland of America who are just outraged and completely perplexed as to what were they thinking.
So under President Huckabee, there would be no TPP?
There would be no TPP unless we had a clear understanding that we would enforce the trade deal on both sides of the border, unless we go back and enforce the trade deals we already have, which we haven't enforced. We've allowed the Chinese specifically to steal intellectual property. We've allowed them to dump products unfairly and subsidize them to American markets, devastating the American market of those same products. And we've allowed them to manipulate their currency, which means that they are able to import things to America, but we don't have the power to export them because the currency manipulation has made our product too expensive to sell.
Our thanks to Governor Mike Huckabee for his time. Now, remember, all week long, We will have more of this exclusive interview with the Republican presidential candidate right here on Newsmax Prime. As we continue our conversation, it's worth noting that Governor Huckabee talks about his reaction to Republicans breaking the so-called 11th commandment. Reagan saying thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Republican, plus some of the lessons Mike Huckabee has learned since he first ran for the presidency. Another programming note in order. This past weekend, I traveled to St. Louis, sat down with another Republican presidential candidate, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. You heard a little bit of what he had to say tonight. Excerpts from that exclusive interview next week, right here on Newsmax Prime. There's more ahead. Stay tuned.